Because the single most exhausting thing about the media right now is how many people emphasize their hatred for Ginny from Ginny and Georgia while actively being like, and Georgia's such a baddie, Georgia's so perfect, because people hate Ginny for two reasons. One, she's a teenage girl. Two, she's a black teenage girl. And they will use any excuse in the show to be like, see, Ginny's a nightmare person, Ginny's the worst, Ginny's heinous. And she's really not. She's just a 16-year-old girl who's making mistakes because she's been traumatized by her past, by her childhood, by her life. And we're all supposed to forgive her. Not forgive Ginny, because no one's allowed to forgive Ginny because she is a black teenage girl. No, we're all supposed to forgive her mother for everything that she put Ginny through, because Georgia was just trying her best. Georgia was just trying to do what was right for her daughter and her son. And you know what? Yeah, Georgia did try her best. Georgia really did try her best. Georgia did everything that she thought was right. But some of what Georgia thought was right was murdering people. Some of what Georgia thought was right was packing and lying to her kids and stealing from her kids and ruining her kids' credit before they even have a chance to start building it themselves. And we forgive Georgia because she has had a traumatic past and is white and beautiful and blonde. But Ginny, who has a problematic past and a troublesome past, but her mother's been trying to protect her by doing all of these things, is an unforgivable 16-year-old, in spite of the fact that she really doesn't understand half of what her mother... Hi, please stop. Please stop scratching the floor. In spite of the fact that Ginny doesn't actually understand half of why her mom is doing anything. Her mom is doing this stuff and not talking to her kids, not communicating to her kids about it. She's just doing it. And Ginny's going, this is fucked up. Because it is, in fact, fucked up. And we're expecting Ginny to just forgive her mom because we know all the information, but Ginny doesn't know all the fucking information. And it's exhausting. Yeah, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. She's just a teenage girl. You're not a teenage girl. You're 10? Are you 10? You're just a baby. You're 12. You're 12. Oh, okay. Anyways, bye. The mirror scene in Bridgerton is gonna have a double meaning. And my mind is a little blown because Colin and Penelope are mirrors to each other. Penelope is a mirror to who Colin actually is. Colin mirrors whoever he's around all the time, except for when he's around Penelope. When he's around Penelope, he's just being himself because he can feel like himself when he's being around her. And then they're gonna bang in front of a mirror! And then they're gonna bang in front of a mirror. They're gonna bang looking at their reflections. And we are gonna get to see the double meaning of Colin finally really realizing who he is because he's with the love of his life. And I think that this is also gonna be the first time that he really gets to enjoy intimacy. Because we've been watching him pay hookers. We've been watching him pay prostitutes this entire first 4 episodes of this season, and he hasn't been enjoying it. Because he is totally 100% a demisexual, okay? Colin's a demisexual. He, needs emotional intimacy before he can actually be physically attracted to someone. And because of this is gonna be the most exciting sexual experience of his life. And it's going to happen so soon! I am screaming! Literally, I can't stop screaming. Okay, thanks, bye. When Colin gets mad at Penelope for being Lady Whistledown and, doesn't actually know what they're doing anymore because he feels like he's, been lied to, so hard and doesn't fully know what he thinks of her, that's when Eloise and Penelope are gonna become best friends again. It'll take 30 seconds. Colin will consider saying something stupid, not even actually stupid. I've thought this through. Colin, when he's being what good am I to you? Eloise is gonna be in the shadows somewhere, trying to see what's going on, what's happening, trying to decipher all the stuff, and that is when she will realize how much she misses her best friend. And that is when Colin and Penelope will they'll have to work stuff out. That'll be a big drama for them, whatever. It'll take half an hour of one episode. But Eloise and Penelope in that time will have become best friends again. It's like when Eloise and Penelope lost each other and Penelope and Colin started getting closer. It's exactly that. But with Colin and Penelope, like, almost kind of considering almost maybe losing each other. And Eloise, we wing it! And then we'll have our best friends and our soulmates. I need to talk about Francesca next. But when I talk about Francesca, I giggle. Why is Hannah Dunn so beautiful? Okay, bye. I don't think Eloise Bridgerton is a mean girl, and I really mean that with my entire heart and soul, because I don't think that she understands that she's being mean, because she grew up with, like, what, 7 siblings, and that's gonna make it so that you think that you have a different, like, level that you can be mean to other people, that people will just, like, appreciate and understand, because I don't know why this is gonna bother me. 1 second. I fixed it. Okay. I did not fix it. I made it work. Okay, there. Eloise Bridgerton isn't actually a mean girl. She's just someone who grew up with a large family and a large family of people who, like, mock each other. So she's always been able to kind of say things that she's wanted to say, and no one's ever really questioned her or doubted her or tried to, like, change what her views are, what her opinions are. Her opinions have always mattered. So then when she goes into the real world and she tries to talk over people when they're telling her something boring, she's gonna be mean about it, and I'm not happy with that. I'm not defending her. I just don't think that she actually understands that she's being mean. I don't think that she understands that she and Cressida Cowper have a lot more in common than they actually think, than she actually thinks. Cressida knows they have a lot in common. Cressida knows they have a lot in common. But the thing is, people keep trying to say that Eloise needs to acknowledge her privilege. Eloise needs to see her privilege, and that's not gonna happen until season 5. That's not gonna happen until Eloise's season actually happens, because Eloise's growth has to be the slowest going of the entire family. Where Benedict is just kind of fucking around and finding out continuously, Eloise is actively trying to figure out who she is and what she wants to be and who she wants to be. And she always thought she wanted to be a spinster, but maybe she doesn't actually want to be a spinster. Maybe she likes women. Maybe it's something different, and it's gonna... Eloise is not actually going to change or grow continuously until her season, because she can't, because we have to continuously see things that need to change and need to be affected by her. So we're seeing more growth in season 3 than we have in season 1 and 2, because in season 1 and 2, Eloise was frozen. Eloise thought that she really found something that was meaningful to her and was important to her, and then it bit her in the ass. And the part that bit her in the ass was Penelope. Penelope was really doing it for Eloise's own good. Eloise was being so fucking stupid, and I don't think people appreciate how stupid Eloise was being. She was being incredibly stupid. But the thing is, hi, can I put you here and you won't scream? Can you not scream? Okay. We're good. Okay. It's really hard filming when he's like this. Okay. The thing is, Eloise isn't going to grow. Eloise isn't going to acknowledge her privileges. Eloise isn't even going to fully understand that she is privileged until she starts seeing more of the world. And Eloise cannot start seeing more of the world until she starts finding her own love life, the own love of her life, because Eloise's season has to be the reason. Eloise's season has to be the reason that she's going to change. Eloise's season has to be the reason that she's gonna change. But she's gonna change, but it's gonna take time, because it has to. It has to take some time. I should have just closed the shade of that window. It's fine. Okay, anyways, Eloise isn't a mean girl. She's just a fucking moron. And she has to learn how to not be mean, because to be a mean girl, I actually think that you actually have to continuously kind of want to cause harm. Like Cressida Cowper wanted to cause harm. Cressida Cowper wants to hurt Penelope Featherington, okay? Eloise never really wants to hurt anyone. She actually thinks that she's doing the right thing, or being nice, or being a nice person. She's just trying to help these girls and, like, fix them. And that's not technically mean. It's mean, but it's not purposefully mean, and it's a different kind of mean. She's being an accidental bully, and we have to see as she grows, and again, she's gonna grow so much now that she learned how she can entertain people by mocking herself and not mocking others. Okay, thanks. I have to go deal with this now. Bye! Bye! Bye!
I know you guys get mad every time I say that I think the Hunger Games reapings were rigged, but I feel like a lot of people just stop watching after I say that because they get mad. But I very strongly feel that they are totally rigged, and I think we are going to get 100% confirmation of this in the next book. And before y'all start putting words in my mouth, no, I don't think that Prim was specifically chosen as a punishment for Katniss or anything like that. I don't think Katniss was a chosen one. I don't think it has anything to do with Katniss at all. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think that they at least have pools of people of specific demographics that they draw from for optimal entertainment value. First of all we really know about the Reapings and the speculations about the Reapings and what they think happens with the careers in the career districts comes from District 12, and they come from Katniss, who's the least reliable narrator in the history of the universe. And all of the information that she gives us are things that she has kind of gleaned off of hearsay, or speculating about, or is listening to from Gale, who also might not be the most reliable source of information. Like, do we really know how the Reapings work, or do we just think we do because we keep taking Katniss at her word when she's told us again and again that we should not be doing that? The Capitol has a thirst for control. They are not going to give the district people any ounce of control over the narrative, which means that, in my opinion, they would very specifically choose from pools of people that they don't think would pose a public threat to Panem, which would be why volunteers in districts like District 12 that were not favorable with the Capitol would be seen as subtle signs of rebellion. Even if it wasn't said to be a sign of rebellion, it was still a rebellion because it was not what they were expected to do. And I 100% think that there were some people who were specifically reaped as punishments, possibly for themselves, possibly for other people. It was 100% used to the Capitol's advantage because they had this giant weapon. Of course they were going to use it to intimidate the people of the districts. Like, I think it would be really foolish and kind of silly of them to leave that massive of a thing up to chance 100% of the time. Before y'all start asking about Tesserae and why they have Tesserae and how Tesserae would work if the people weren't actually put into the Reaping Bullmore, it's to create class division. It wasn't about being put into the Bullmore. It was about how some people had more than others and had a higher chance of survival because they didn't need to rely as much on the government for their survival. That's how we get, like, the whole beef between Gale and Madge, and then it's a really big deal when they kind of get over that beef because there was a really big class division there, and Katniss uniting them was a really big deal. I think the Reapings were rigged. I'm confident they were rigged. I think we're going to get 100% confirmation on this in the next book. I stand by this. I know people are going to get mad at me about it in the comments and say that I'm missing the entire point of the book, but I know that I'm not because I stand very strongly behind this. Also, it's subjective. There's not like one right or wrong theory about things. If you guys don't agree with me, that's fine. But that's what I think. The end. I've seen this comment quite a lot in regards to the casting for the new Hunger Games movie. And no hate to anybody who has commented this, because I understand the feelings behind it. But one, did they not use actual teenagers in the original Hunger Games movies for pretty much everybody aside from the main cast? Because I'm pretty sure they did. I mean, those tributes look like children. I'm pretty sure a lot of them were teenagers, or at the very least in their very early 20s or late teens. Personally, for the main cast of characters, though, who are all going to be like 16 to 18 years old probably, I don't know why we're pushing so hard to have child actors put in those roles. Especially because, like, on a logistical level, not working with child actors makes sense for a giant production like this. But not only that, I would highly encourage some of you guys to look up some of the things that Jennifer Lawrence went through while filming for the Hunger Games. And once you do, I feel like you may feel a little bit differently about propping up child actors in these lead roles for the Hunger Games, because, like, Jennifer Lawrence has had lasting physical issues because of her role as Katniss. The Capitol also sexualizes a lot of the tributes, and if that is going to happen to any of the main characters, I would fucking hate to watch that happen to a teenage actor, dude. I've said a billion, trillion, million times on here that I don't think show business or media in general, being on camera is like a thing that children should be doing. I don't think children have business being in business with adults. And honestly, this is possibly one of the things that could be beneficial about the upswing in technology that we're having right now, because I don't think that we should require child actors. I don't think that children should be working. We have such extensive computer animation technology now. I just don't think it should even be necessary anymore. That's my soapbox. I personally don't think that it should be necessary for teenagers to be playing teenagers, because usually they already do in the Hunger Games, aside from a couple of people. Here's my updated fan cast for the new Hunger Games movie. I'm not accepting criticisms at this time. In the role of President Snow, we have Kylie Jenner. And if you're someone who's only seen the movies and is confused by this casting choice, just go look up a physical description of President Snow and you'll understand. Because the way he's described looks like this in my head. For Haymitch, we have Tom Blythe. I don't think we got enough of him in the first movie. I think we need more of him. They don't have to say anything. Like, don't acknowledge that he played another character in the franchise. Just have him in there. Jennifer Coolidge is playing Maisie Donner. I don't really have a reason for this one, but I don't need one because it's Jennifer Coolidge. Playing the girl Haymitch has a head-to-head with at the end of the games and ultimately wins against by throwing an axe into the force field and hitting her in the head with it because it bounces off of it. Jojo Siwa. Again, like, self-explanatory. I don't need to explain this one to you. And Caesar is Matthew Gray Goobler. I will not be taking criticisms at this time. I'm so excited to hear what perspective we're going to hear the next Hunger Games book from, because it's going to tell us so much about what the book is actually going to be about. Because we could get a first-person Haymitch POV, which I feel like some people kind of expect, but it could do what the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes did and have a third-person POV, because Katniss is like the technical main character of the series, so they might only give her the first-person POV. She could kind of keep doing what she was doing with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and have a third-person POV that only focuses on the main character, but she could go a third direction. She could have multiple points of view, or she could be waiting for the movie to come out for us to get those multiple points of view, because that's what they've done in the past. So I know there will be 100% things we see in the movie and not in the books, and vice versa. But I'm really curious to see what they end up doing. I think it would be really cool to get some perspectives that are happening in other districts. I'm really curious to see what's happening with Plutarch during this time. I think it would be really cool to get a little bit of his perspective and possibly see kind of what starts to radicalize him during this time. Or perhaps he was already radicalized, or he had yet to kind of start going down that journey, so it could be just really interesting to see what kind of person he is. I think it would be really interesting also to see what President Snow is doing and like see what his family looks like and stuff, but I doubt that we'll get a whole lot of that in the next book just because of how big of a role he had in the previous one, and it's not going to be from his perspective this time. Like, people keep asking me to give predictions, but we don't have like any information to go off of, especially the fact that we don't know what perspective we're getting from the book. That is going to tell us so much about what it's going to be about, because like all we really know is that it's set during Haymitch's games. That is literally like all the information that we have. She could pull a fast one on us and say that Plutarch's going to be the main character of the whole book and we're not going to get any Haymitch except for what they see on screen. You never know. I hope that doesn't happen though. I hope that doesn't happen. The second quarter quell is going to be one of the craziest Hunger Games yet. In the arena, we are going to have a series of very easily solvable puzzles that a 12-year-old will be able to achieve, but absolutely nobody else will for some reason. President Coin is Lucy Gray. We're going to get confirmation about that in the next book. President Snow and Plutarch Heavensbee had a torrid love affair that lasted over the course of many, many years, but not before President Snow got President Coin pregnant. The Jabberjays, those aren't real animals. Those are cursed Asian women. Greasy Say was a Protestant. How does pooping in the Capitol work? Well, Capitol citizens don't deem buttholes as necessary, so they've all had them surgically removed. Haymitch wasn't chosen to go into the arena because he had bad luck or because he was being punished for something. He was chosen to go into the arena because President Snow secretly loved him and saw him as a son, because he had unrequited feelings towards Haymitch's mother that he was never able to deal with. Lucy Gray is Haymitch's mom, which means that President Snow is also Haymitch's dad. They actually did re-record the Hunger Games audiobooks a while ago, and they are absolutely incredible. Whenever I hear that people don't like the Hunger Games audiobooks, I know for a fact that they have not listened to the Tatiana Maslany versions of the audiobooks, which are the ones available on Audible. Carolyn McCormick recorded the original audiobooks, and no hate to Carolyn McCormick. We love you. But the Tatiana Maslany versions of the audiobooks are some of the most emotionally devastating things I've ever listened to. to the point where I rarely actually open the books unless I want to cite something specifically, because the way she performs it is like how it was meant to be performed, in my opinion. It hits even harder when you take into account that The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is a Senecan tragedy, which is a story meant to be read out loud. I've talked about the Tatiana Maslany audiobooks on here before, but if you haven't listened to them, I cannot encourage you enough to go listen to them right now. She brings the story to life in so many new and beautiful ways, and her voice is also really, really relaxing. I regularly listen to the audiobooks to fall asleep, and her take on the lullaby Katniss sings to Rue in the arena, I have to pause and just hyperventilate for a little bit when I listen to it. It's so good, dude. I've heard the Lucy Gray is coin theory so many times, but Covey out in nowhere being what coin stands for is one of the funniest fucking things I've ever heard in my life. Sold. I'm sold. This has to be it. Oh my darling. Oh my darling. Oh my darling Clementine. You are lost and gone forever, oh my darling Clementine. La la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day. It will brighten all the way. Well, all right, I'm bad, but then you're no prize either. All right, I'm bad, but then there's nothing new. Strange things have happened here. No stranger would they be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. La 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 la. You can't take my sass. You can't take my talkin'. You can kiss my ass. La 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 la. This morning when I woke up, one of the very first articles I read was that 4 Israeli prisoners of war were rescued, and immediately I knew that a massacre could have happened because there was no ceasefire deal. So the only way that these prisoners of war could have been released and rescued was if there was a massacre. And surely enough, I learned that this port that the US was building in Gaza, which we all knew was bullshit, by the way, to allow humanitarian aid trucks to get into Gaza because Israel has cut off Palestinians from receiving humanitarian aid for months. So they have been starving out Palestinians in Gaza as they have been bombing them to death. So the humanitarian aid trucks that come through this port had US and Israeli soldiers inside. And when they opened the trucks, they literally began to fire on Palestinians. Over 200 Palestinians died, men, women, and children. Many of them were children because they were so excited to see humanitarian aid come inside. They have been starving, and they did this in a refugee camp, in Nusrat refugee camp. 400 Palestinians were injured. Do you understand how in order to rescue 4 Israelis, they killed 200 people? 200 people. It's been over 40,000 Palestinians who have been murdered, who have been brutally murdered by Israel and the US, because the US is completely complicit in this genocide. They used your tax dollars to commit a genocide. They killed men, women, and children to save 4 Israeli prisoners of war. I am so disgusted. This is so beyond demonic, and the videos that are coming out of the children whose bodies are completely ripped apart, the parents that are holding their babies, it's beyond disgusting. And then you look at the 4 Israeli prisoners of war, and they look happy, they look healthy, they look nothing like the prisoners that the Palestinian hostages that Israel has been detaining. They look nothing like them. The Palestinians that have been held hostage in Israel look like they have been starved to death, look like they've been through a Holocaust. But the 4 Israeli prisoners of war, they look beaming. I dare you to go look up what they look like. I dare you to look at the pictures of them coming out of Gaza. They look healthy. They look beaming. And we watched thousands upon thousands of Palestinians die over the past months because of America and Israel. America is completely complicit in this genocide, and the fact that they could come in to Gaza in a humanitarian aid trucks hiding and then open fire on people who are starving is beyond demonic. It is fucking evil. So recently I visited Vietnam, and I couldn't stop thinking about the infamous photo of the Napalm Girl. If you don't know, it's this photo here. It single-handedly brought an end to the Vietnam War. It was a photo of a 9-year-old Vietnamese girl who was running naked because her body was severely burned. The significance of that photo is that it gave a face to the innocent victims of the Vietnam War, and it made Americans protest and pressure the US government to end the war in Vietnam. And a couple weeks ago, I remember Anat made a video about this where she was wondering what's going to be the photo. What's going to be the photo that changes America, that forces the world to look at the genocide happening in Gaza and say, enough is enough. And you know, she mentioned that, you know, there's been the photo of the headless baby, or the little girl who's hanging off the wall, or Hind. And it's like there are numerous photos and videos of children just being like ripped apart by bombs. And it's like none of these videos or photos has mobilized the world to put an end to this genocide. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because what has changed since the Vietnam War to now? What has changed about our society? And it's like we have become so desensitized. And not only that, it's been decades of dehumanizing Arabs and Muslims. So seeing Arab children being blown up like this it's like another day for Americans, because deep down they've been institutionalized to believe that these people are horrible. These people deserve it, because if we let them live, they'll grow up to be terrorists. And that is the mindset that most Americans have, that they can look at Black and brown children and feel completely disconnected from seeing them be killed like this. And not just Palestinian children, but like, look at what's happening in Sudan, in Congo. Like, we are seeing Congolese children mine for cobalt, mine for the resources that go into use our phones. And we're watching these videos, and that's been going on for decades. 6 million Congolese people have died so that we can have phones and computers and Teslas, and no one cares. You know, when it's Black and brown children, no one cares. And that is decades of institutionalizing people to be so disconnected from seeing children die like this. It's that since the Vietnam War, our society has only become sicker and sicker and sicker. And so seeing kids and seeing videos and photos and images of children being ripped apart just becomes trauma porn. It becomes just another category in all the other vices that we have, whether it's drugs, whether it's porn, whether it's video games, whatever it is that we use to disconnect, to disassociate from the reality of this world. And that is sick, when we become a society that allow kids to be killed like this, and we don't speak up, or we say, this is too much for me, I can't handle this. What does that say about you? We have become a society that is just all cowards. I live among cowards. When there is nothing in my mind that could allow me to see a kid be murdered like this. A human being, it's not just a kid, just any person be ripped apart like this and not speak up. We live in a sick society, and this sick society is something that has been decades in the making. We are the way we are because they wanted it to be like this. And if you don't respond to seeing children being killed like this, you have to ask yourself, am I a robot?
Am I the product of what the system wants me to be? Are my goals, are my ambitions exactly what this institution, what this system wants me to be?
I don't know if Sabrina Carpenter fired her old marketing team, but if she did, good. Because now they're working. Now they're putting in work. Like, because I remember listening to emails I can send and be like, she needs to fire the entire marketing team, because what do you mean there was 4 albums prior to this? Where was the noise? Like they just made her an account that is like for her, like I don't even know what to call it. You know how like people will have like an HQ, like this is the account for like the fan updates or whatever things. They just made her one of those. She has 5 albums. Y'all are behind. Like, thank God somebody finally got it together. Like, because now they're putting in the work. Now they're on the clock. Before, nobody in the building. Like, because literally for the earlier ones, I'm like, she has to have the worst marketing team of all time. Like, that has to be the case. Like, I'm so serious. It's just like the way things were released and the timeline and like they were setting her up. Like, so yeah, I don't know if it's a different crew or something, but now they're acting accordingly. Like, yeah, you tease a song and then drop it soon while people still like it. Like, because the thing that other people do, what they'll post, like, they'll tease a song and they're like, guys, this is coming. Like, established artists, they'll tease a song and then it doesn't come out for like 3 months, and it's like, girl, we have already, I don't want to hear the song anymore. Like, I'm like, yes, like Espresso was popping, now releasing album. Like, finally someone on the marketing team has a brain. Like, the whole time they have been setting her up. Like, I'm so serious.
Real people don't really queer bait. You know, brands do, personas can and do, characters on a TV show can and do, because they're capitalizing on the idea and the performance of queerness in order to gain an audience and make money. But real human beings, like people, don't owe you a coming out story, don't owe you certain behaviors, and don't owe you gender performance. So the idea that they're queer baiting you is like illogical. That's not to say that human beings can't do things that are hurtful or messed up, because they can and they do. The whole, oh, I only like girls when I drink thing. Like, that's a multi-layered issue that is harmful, but it's not queer baiting. So if you see a guy, for example, and you think, oh, he must be gay because he acts like more typically feminine, and then you find out that he is in fact not gay, he wasn't queer baiting you. He doesn't owe you the performance of masculinity. He was just being himself. Or like if you see a girl who says she likes girls, but then she has a boyfriend, both of those things can be true. She's not queer baiting you. She might be bi, because bi people also exist. Now, people can perpetuate harmful stereotypes. People can be really sucky. People can cause harm. But real human beings, people, don't queerbait, because the idea that they do is predicated on the idea that they owe you some type of performance, and they don't. So at this point, you've likely heard that the IOF rescued 4 Israeli hostages in the last 36 hours or so. You've likely seen their pictures, relatively physically unharmed, meat on their bones, looking similar to the way they looked beforehand, which is something we can't say of any of the Palestinians, but I digress. By now, you've likely heard multiple media outlets talk about this as if it's a huge win in this ongoing quote-unquote war that they're fighting. But what gets me is that these 4 lives rescued came at the cost of over 200 Palestinian refugees seeking shelter in a refugee camp losing their lives and another 400 wounded. 600 people are now in worse physical condition than those 4 hostages were as a direct result of this rescue mission. And I'm not saying this to compare the cost of a life, but I'm saying this to point out just how undervalued Palestinian lives are, because if the roles were reversed, there's no way that people would let 200 people get massacred in exchange for 4 people to be safe. And the worst part is that none of these people had to suffer. No one had to be wounded. No one had to be martyred. Everybody could have been home safe. Could have been home. Because that man has rejected all ceasefire agreements that would have gotten all the hostages, not just the 4, all of them, back home. Which means that not only is every single Palestinian life so undervalued, but the lives of the other hostages are undervalued and pit against each other as pawns in this political game. They are telling you exactly what and who is important and who isn't. And that information, if it hasn't already, should disgust you. For children to be the most oppressed group, most likely to experience violence, most likely to experience SA, all this host of other stuff, y'all are way too comfortable being just mean to and about them. Half the time when y'all talk about kids, if you swapped out children for any other demographic in the world, you would sound like a bigot. The Yeah, I need a place without black people because they're just so loud. Man, I can't stand poor people. I don't know why people keep having them in the first place. We need to keep gay people in the house until they learn how to behave in public. Like, those are real sentences I've heard about kids, but I took out kids, put in another demographic. Y'all think I'm crazy. Y'all get on here and talk about how hard you have to restrain yourselves to not want to punt a kid in public for crying, a child. Y'all get on here and talk about how you shouldn't have to put up with nobody's snot-nosed, raggedy kids. Name calling a child? I mean, people say things like, I miss the 50s because back then kids were quiet. Meanwhile, back then they were putting alcohol in their mouth to sedate them and beating them every time they acted out. And y'all want to bring that back? I know y'all want to blame parents for not parenting, but as I remind you that learning to be a person is a learning experience and parenting is a learning experience, these are more often than not just people trying to figure it out. Y'all have no empathy, you're entitled, you have no resiliency against a moderate inconvenience, and you think it's okay to bully children because they're smaller than you and you can. I'm not saying you have to want kids, I'm not even saying you have to like kids, but y'all need to start treating these human beings with a shred, a modicum of human respect. Like, be serious. If you're one of those people who's like, I don't hate kids, I hate bad parents, because why is your child tantruming in a grocery store? I want you to think of the hardest class you've ever taken. And while you're thinking about this hardest class you've ever taken, maybe it's like 8 a.m. calculus, I want you to think about taking a test in that class. And the night before you take that test, maybe you had to work. Maybe you got in super late. Maybe you had a fight with your parents. I don't know. But you go into that 8 a.m. calculus class the next day or whatever it is, take that test and you fail. Maybe you got A's across the board otherwise, but on that day and time, you fail that test. You absolutely bomb it. And that becomes the grade, that one test that every single person judges you as a student and as a human being by. That one test, that one time. That's what it sounds like when y'all judge these parents off these like 10-second interactions you be having with their kids in public. Now, I'm not saying there aren't parents who don't parent, because there are absolutely quite a few. That's why the education system is like falling to pieces. But y'all will hear a kid crying in the store because you're inconvenienced, assume that that kid is a bad kid and that parent is a bad parent based on that one interaction you have in a grocery store. Maybe that kid who's learning emotional regulation missed nap time. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe their clothes are on too tight. Maybe they have an itch they can't scratch. Y'all get grumpy over like the smallest things. So do children. And that parent is trying to figure out that scenario the best they can. And here you go. Oh, you're a bad parent. Y'all spend a lot of time up here in your heads. You need to bring it down about here-ish. You're important, but you're not that special. You know what I mean? Have some empathy for other people. Because for them, this might be the hardest test on the hardest day. And here you go, judging their whole character based off that. Queer people live in the South. Poor people live in the South. People of color live in the South. The South of the United States is the most diverse region of the country to live in. And every couple of months, y'all get on here and completely disregard all of these people because these states tend to be red. Never mind that they are the most directly impacted by these laws that y'all say you hate. All this legislation passed by people who clearly do not care about their constituents, they are completely disregarded by y'all. Chappell Roan should still perform in the South because despite anti-LGBTQ legislation, LGBTQ folk still live here. In fact, all artists should still continue to come to the South because all people still continue to live here. And on a much bigger scale, I'll never forget the way y'all treated Texas during the big freeze a couple of years ago where people literally died and y'all said they deserved it. And for what? The people who live here are still human beings and deserve to be treated as such. So get off your high horse, stop acting like your neck of the woods is any better, and treat people with some decency. A lot of the adults you see tantruming in public are rude, condescending, and entitled with no emotional regulation, which I think is worse than a child with no emotional regulation, but that's not the point. However, when possible, you should still at least try to approach these grown adults with a little bit of empathy and care and grace too. I know we don't want to, might feel a little counterintuitive, maybe even radical, but you should. I remember seeing this post about this person who got yelled at by this guy over like a minor traffic issue. I mean, getting blessed out. And eventually they part ways. The person goes on into the gas station, which is where I guess they were headed. They come back out and there's a note on their car that's like, my emotions are all out of whack. I'm sorry, my mom just died. While I think I'm pretty emotionally regulated, I know I also have like a lot of anger in me. So that really stuck with me because you really don't know what other people are going through in a day. You might be seeing that generally great person in one of their darkest moments and you have no idea. So I try to approach all situations, unless proven otherwise, with at least a modicum of like empathy and care and grace, because I really don't know what I've stumbled upon when interacting with a stranger, and it's really not my place to judge. If any of the marginalized people from the South did anything that resembles what we saw on January 6th, they would be beaten, brutalized, detained, arrested, and imprisoned for who knows how long if they don't go missing, if they aren't unalived on site. See, a lot of y'all liberal leftist folks are really great at understanding things from an intellectual standpoint. Oh, if this happens, then this should happen too. But y'all are terrible at putting anything into the complicated practice of the world in which we live in. The reason that January 6th could even happen in the first place is because almost everybody there was a cishet white dude backed up by the government at the time. And I know in y'all's heads you should think, oh, well, people in the South should just do what they did, or maybe pull a French Revolution, or heck, maybe even the Hunger Games, since that seems to be y'all's main point of reference. But that can't be the case. And that's because y'all never consider the toll of human lives when it comes to these marginalized communities. Despite having decades of evidence to back up the fact that they can and will unalive activists and organizers and regular protesters, y'all continue down this path of just riot. Even now, in current history, they are still taking lives for protesting. Not rioting, not a mutiny, protesting. And yet y'all say, oh, but you should do it anyway. The white people can do it. Why can't you? It's an asinine thought that can only exist outside of the complex context that is the world that we live in. And yet y'all continuously say things like that. So stop saying that people need to sacrifice themselves in a battle that you literally look away from, or else they deserve whatever they have coming to them, and start approaching these conversations with the nuance and education that they deserve. First of all, don't call me sis. I don't know how many times black women have to get on here and tell y'all to stop calling us sis, stop calling us girl. We are not your friends, and you need to talk to us like you have some sense. Second, if you do not understand voter disenfranchisement and gerrymandering, you really need to bow out of all conversations regarding elections in the South. Politicians will redistrict the entire state just to keep it red, and have been doing so for years. But even if you can get past that, you then have to get past the other barriers that come with voting. Y'all always talk about how poor the South is, and yet we don't get November 4th off, which means people have to take off of their jobs to go vote. They're not doing that. Or they have to go seek out other means of getting their voices heard, which means that they have to go through actual barriers like their mail getting lost or the ballot just never arriving. What are they supposed to do about that? You need an ID to vote. You get your ID from the DMV. Do you know how far away DMVs are from rural communities? Do you know how inaccessible that is? And to keep it a buck, a lot of marginalized people in the South just don't want to vote because they feel like it doesn't matter. Because for a lot of marginalized people who recently had the ability to get their voices heard, they started voting. They did their part. And look around. What good did it do them? And I'm not saying it's right. I think that everybody should vote. I think it is part of those civic obligations that we should all be doing. But to pretend like all these marginalized people are just sitting back and twiddling their thumbs and letting it all happen is ignorant at best. But you should focus on that, sis. Maybe crack open a book or two. The people who love their country the most or their homes the most are not the ones who just follow the leaders no matter what they say or do. It's the people who fight and advocate for their home to be better. And I'm not talking about hyper-patriotism or nationalism, because for me, that's not love. That's something else. It's like obsession in a really unhealthy way. But I'm talking about a genuine love and affinity for and connection to a place. I am from the South. I am from North Carolina. I love my state. I love my home. And so I want my home to be better. I want it to be better for me. I want it to be better for my neighbors. I want it to be better for my community. And so I fight so that it can be better for everyone because I love it. Think about it like you think about a best friend relationship. When you think about best friends, is it just one person following the other person around, doing whatever they say, even if it leads them both to self-destruction? Probably not. It's probably something more along the lines of two people who listen and care about each other, who hold space for each other, who hold each other accountable and push each other to be better. And that is what it means to love anyone or any place. So people are advocating or protesting or whatever, and other people say, well, if you don't like it here, you should just leave. They actually love it. Love it enough to fight for it, love it enough to work for it, love it enough to want it to be better. So they're not going to go. And it's a moot point in telling them so.
So a bar in Idaho has adopted Hetero Male Mondays as a sort of gotcha towards Pride Month. And to be honest, I'm not even mad, I'm amused. First of all, how are you going to decide who's a heterosexual male in this scenario? Is there a trivia? Is there a physical test? Is there a contest to see how well they wipe their asses? How are you going to determine who's a gay guy and who's a straight guy just by appearance? And what does the celebration look like, right? What are y'all going to do when you get all these straight men in this one space? Discuss methods on how to not please your wives? And really, I'm only sharing this because straight people who get mad at Pride Month are a very delusional bunch. Because if not for y'all, Pride Month would not exist in the first place. Pride Month is meant to celebrate queer people as a community that has continued to thrive and find joy despite being marginalized. Who do y'all think that marginalization comes from? Logically, there shouldn't need to be a celebration for anybody's sexuality because at the end of the day, your sexual orientation has nothing to do with anybody else besides you and the people that you sleep with or date. But because straight people could not mind the business that fucks them all those centuries ago, here we are. Y'all didn't have to spread myths that being queer is a mental illness. Y'all did not have to restrict us of the same rights and comforts that are afforded to straight people. Y'all didn't have to beat on us and hate crime us. Y'all didn't have to unalive us. Y'all didn't have to do none of that shit, but you did. And we're still here, which deserves a celebration. And if you're a straight person who finds yourself getting irritated with the concept of Pride Month, I need you to touch your neighbor and say, neighbor, they are only trying to liberate themselves from the prisons that we constructed. Amen.
Listen, okay, I watched Bridgerton Season 3 Part 2 today. They had one of the hardest jobs to do. They needed to wrap up the Lady Whistledown storyline and still make it feel like Colin and Penelope's season. Unfortunately, those two things coupled together, it wasn't gonna work. It wasn't gonna work. Really had their hands tied, I get it, because you couldn't have the Lady Whistledown storyline tied up without the utmost level of drama, okay? It needed to deliver, and it did. What it costed us was more scenes of just Penelope and Colin. That was what we sacrificed. I had a perfect solution. Y'all could have hit me up. We could have fixed this. It would have been 2 more episodes. We would have been at work for a few more weeks, maybe a couple of months, you know, but we could have made something shake.
Bridgerton has a major problem and we need to talk about it. We felt it a little in season 2 and we're feeling it again in season 3, but Bridgerton has too many side plots going on. And it's taking vital time away from the main couple of each season. Just in season 3, we have Pollen's storyline, the Featherington storyline, Francesca's storyline, Eloise and Cressida, the Mondrich family, Benedict's non-existent storyline, Violet and Lord Anderson, Lady Danbury and Lord Anderson, the Queen, Cancany and their very small storyline. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. Now, let me be clear. My issue is actually not with the amount of side plots going on in the show. I actually love the fact that the TV show takes the main story from the books and makes it into an ensemble show. However, it's only a beneficial thing when it's not taking away from the main couple of the season, which it's starting to do. So like I said, my issue is actually not with the amount of storylines going on in Bridgerton. My issue is the fact that they're trying to squeeze all of these storylines into just 8 episodes. This whole 8 episode per season epidemic that we're going through really needs to stop. And I'm not saying shows need to go back to when they had 22 episodes per season, because 22 episodes is a lot. And Bridgerton is not a show that needs 22 episodes per season. However, I do think that the issue of the main couple feeling like they're not getting enough screen time could easily be fixed by making it 10 episodes or even 13 episodes. I think 8 episodes for season 1 was fine, but as you get more seasons into the show, you're gonna get a lot of new characters added, which means more storylines added onto that. So if you add more characters but keep the episodes the same amount, it's gonna start to feel really compact and crowded. I also think season 3 in particular feels a little wacky because it's a new showrunner compared to seasons 1 and 2. But I think this feeling of side plots overshadowing the main couple needs to be fixed ASAP if Bridgerton wants to continue their success and finish all of Julia Quinn's books.
I know everybody has been joking about the fact that media literacy is dead and dying, but nothing has convinced me of this more than some of the absolute batshit crazy brain dead takes I have seen about Bridgerton within the past hour. Okay, it was miss after miss after miss. I don't know what happened because I've been on the right side of Bridgerton TikTok for days, but there's one that I have to address, and I'm not going to tag this person, but I'm actually losing my mind over what I'm about to tell you. This is a grown adult woman, okay, and this was the take. Does anyone find it really weird and problematic that of all of the things that Bridgerton decides to not be historically accurate on, like the costumes and the way that race plays into it, don't you guys think it's weird and like really problematic that the one thing they decide to keep is the gender dynamics? And then she goes on and she's like, we've seen so many of the Bridgerton men, like they just get to sleep around and be with prostitutes. And then the women don't even get like a sex education. Like they don't, if they get kissed, they're like ruined. And that's so weird and problematic. And I hate that they kept it in the show. That is the show. that is literally the show. If you take that out of it, there is no show. And this woman, she's like, yeah, I feel like it's even worse this season. So this person has watched all three seasons. And the big groundbreaking take is, why is there sexism? I don't even have anything else to say on that. I don't know what to say to that, because it's not even like, oh, you misinterpreted something. No, you just missed it. You just missed everything, apparently. This is the part that really gets me, because I feel like lately I have seen so many supposedly leftist liberals have discourse about like media and what's being shown in media, and so much of it is literally just repackaged conservatism, and like it actually blows my mind. And here's what I think is happening, because again, this obsession with like moral purity in the media that we consume, not that there isn't a space to like be critical of what we're consuming, there absolutely is, but this obsession with like everything that we watch should be supporting the ideas that I hold to be true, and if we enjoy something that doesn't hold those ideals, that's problematic and we shouldn't be giving it a platform. Like that type of ideology. I think what's happening truly is so many of these people are deconstructing their Christianity that they were raised with, right? But I don't think that's actually happening, okay? I think what people are doing is they've grown out of their faith, they no longer believe in God, and instead of actually deconstructing the framework that they were like raised in, I think they're just taking that framework and projecting it onto progressive ideas and calling it a day. But in the process of doing that, they're actually just becoming Puritans, which are conservatives. Like, do you get what I'm saying? This obsession with moral purity is actually going to drive me insane. And again, there's always space for nuance, but it's not me who has the issue with nuance, you know? Well, actually, this is the part that's getting to me, okay? Because literally, the very first time that we meet Penelope in the entire series, beginning of the show, she's at a ball looking at Colin longingly across the room, who's dancing with other people. They have been friends since they were kids, okay? In this season, he writes her letters the whole time that they're not together during the season, and he has been for years, and she always responds. It's not until this season that she wasn't responding, and he's like, why aren't you responding to my letters? I've missed you. Where have you been? It's been going on for so long. What I am learning from other people's comment sections is I think people actually just really hate the friends to lovers trope, which I'm sorry, but you're just wrong. Like, what do you have against peace? What do you have against like growing affection over a long period of time? Okay, like don't get me wrong, I love a good enemies to lovers, I do. But why have we as a society decided that passion is the opposite of peace? Because it's not. It's not. Those two things can coincide, but y'all are just so used to wanting toxicity that you're demanding it be in every love story, and it just isn't necessary. Colin and Penelope are both sweet, sensitive people, and they're like the whole thing of people being like, oh my gosh, he's not even acting like himself, like he's being such a little whore, like all of that. Why do we have to see him with prostitutes? Listen, I also didn't love watching all of that, but the entire point is that that's not who Colin is. And he's trying to be who other people want him to be. And the only person who accepts him and loves him for who he is Penelope. It's Penelope. And she's the one who frees him from this idea that he has to be the person that society expects him to be. That is the point. It is I swear to God, people are being intentionally obtuse. Okay, I understand what you're trying to say with this, and I think you speak for a lot of people who do feel this way, but it's coming from a fundamental misunderstanding of how the trope works. It's not that Colin only fell in love with Penelope because all of a sudden he was jealous. That's not how the trope works, okay? The trope works is these two people have been in love with each other for a long time, and it takes a triggering event for at least one of those people to realize that. These aren't new feelings. They're just feelings that Colin hasn't noticed within himself or hasn't seen in the right context to fully understand them. If you actually go back and watch the other seasons, yes, Penelope has always felt this way about him, and that's been made obvious in the narrative. But if you watch Colin, he's always been a little bit nervous around Penelope, despite the fact that they've been friends. He has always cared about her opinion more than others. He has always felt such positive, loving things towards Penelope. He just didn't realize what those feelings meant because he had other stuff going on. So I'm going to actually talk about something that my friend Cassie pointed out because I think it was such an astute observation. So for their first kiss scene, that's on top of like the little bit of jealousy that he was kind of feeling about when this whole Soder thing started, because also remember, he offered to do that. He didn't realize it was going to make him feel the way that he feels about it, okay? But when they actually kiss for the first time, Penelope has never been kissed before, right? So she doesn't know necessarily what to expect. But when she does have this kiss with Colin, and it's like electrifying, as a person who reads romance novels, that's just what she thinks kisses are. Of course it feels this way because that's everything I've read has described it this way. So of course that's how it feels when I kiss Colin. Okay, Colin, on the other hand, has kissed people before, right? He hasn't felt that way about somebody that he's kissed before. He also doesn't read romance novels. He doesn't realize that a kiss is supposed to make somebody feel this way if it actually means something. And that's why she's able to just kind of walk away and be like, okay, I'm letting it go, I'm moving on. Whereas he's like, oh my God, is it supposed to feel like this? Has it been like this? Has this been possible the whole time? The reason that it feels rushed to you guys is because you're not counting the literal years of lead up. Just because Colin doesn't realize that he loves Penelope until there is a moment that triggers that jealousy doesn't mean he hasn't loved her. He literally says it himself. She's the person that he goes to above anybody else at parties because she's the only one who understands him and consistently makes him laugh and feels comfortable around. Like, these are all things that Colin himself has said about Penelope. He's just a big dummy and doesn't realize what that means. Think about it like when you're working on a project, okay? You know how you get really into it and you're so close up that like something feels off about it, but you're not exactly able to pinpoint what it is. So you might take a break for a couple of days, and then when you come back to it, all of a sudden you have a new perspective. What do you think 4 months in Europe did for him? Like, that on top of the fact that all of a sudden he was being denied this thing, communication with Penelope, that he has like grown accustomed to and has valued in his life, all of a sudden that has been taken away and he is aware of and feels that gap. It just, people don't always know how they feel even if they feel things, okay? I need you guys to understand that. Penelope did not beg for that kiss. Oh my God, I've seen this take multiple times and it genuinely angers me. She was not begging, okay? She asked for something that she wanted, which number one is character growth for Penelope. She is such a passive person who doesn't feel like she has the right to the things that she wants. She doesn't feel like she deserves them. So for her to even like have the courage to ask shows growth in her character. But number two, it's literally she is putting all of her trust in Colin and trusting that he's not going to betray her, okay? Because not only is she like being vulnerable to ask for what she wants, she's also trusting Colin not to judge her for it. She's trusting him not to tell anybody about it and potentially ruin her. She trusts him to keep this secret. She also trusts him to care about her enough to oblige this thing that she doesn't even think that he wants. She knows that he's not interested, but she trusts him enough to ask. She was not begging him. Literally, she said, "Will you kiss me? Please." She said, "Please." Please is not begging. And the other thing is, Colin only did it because he wants to. If he didn't want to, he wouldn't have. In the past, even when he's wanted to, he didn't. But do you remember the whole thing with Marina? The thing that everybody is using as an excuse as to why he could never love Penelope? Yeah, he had the opportunity. She was trying to, like, trap him, right? And he was like, "No, I respect you too much. I'm too much of a gentleman." He physically couldn't show the restraint for Penelope because he wanted it. And that's why he literally goes in for seconds.